Councillor Hiller, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Fower relating to those now housed in St Michael's Gate?
Indeed, Mr Mayor, I'd be happy to. But there are 57 properties currently available to the Council, all of which are occupied. As Councillor Walsh has made public a number of times, the costs range from £19.50 a night for a one-bedroom flat to £50 a night for a five-bedroom house, and 88 properties will be made available in due course. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Councillor Fower, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that answer. My supplementary question is, what assurances can the Cabinet Member give myself and other members of this Chamber as to what will happen when the present contract/lease runs out, I think in a couple of years' time at St Michael's Gate? Because obviously I am probably a bit like the Cabinet Member, mindful and potentially fearful that somebody like Luton Borough Council may come in and take over. So just looking for assurances. Thank you.
Councillor Hiller.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank you for the supplementary question. As this is now within my portfolio, Mr Mayor, I'll answer any question about it factually. Quite what happens in 3 years' time, or nearly 3 years' time, I think we need to determine nearer to that date, Councillor Fower. Mr Mayor, I'm aware it must really irritate some of the opposition members that these properties were bought by an independent firm from an independent seller in a legitimate and lawful transaction. This council was offered the facility thereafter, and any half-sensible independent accommodator would opine that this council took the right decision at that time. What would the opposition would have done, Mr Mayor? Would they have buried their heads and hoped that these so-called nasty people would have just gone away? It wouldn't have happened like that, would it? Of course, I agree that what this firm has done isn't moralistic, or it's not nice, Mr Mayor, but my colleagues not taking that decision would have resulted in an additional burden on our hard-pressed taxpayers, our schools and our already stretched frontline services. Mr Mayor, this administration doesn't shy away from taking difficult decisions forced upon it by circumstances completely beyond its control, and continued attempts to make political capital out of this have been rejected by the public, as the Lib Dems' result in the recent East Ward by-election very clearly demonstrated. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I call on any other speakers? Councillor Fower.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just responding to the figure. I think it was 160 votes were cast, and I was just, as a point of information for other members of this chamber, to ask what percentage of the turnout is that. I mean, I honestly don't know, so I'll be interested to find out.
We believe it's 47.7.
That is correct, Mr Mayor. Yes, it's
Councillor Fower.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just returning back to the decision regarding the Peterborough Lottery, and bearing in mind that obviously members of the public may not be aware of the reports that have been published and shared with elected members.
Just a minute, Councillor Fower. Councillor Ellis.
Sorry.
Thank you. Just a point of order on my question about the consultation, not just been an online consultation. I didn't get an answer to that.
You're going to have to quote the standing order, Councillor Ellis.
Standing order, whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Fower, if you continue.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just saying, if we could return to the decision regarding the Peterborough Lottery, and bearing in mind, as I say, that a lot of people haven't read the actual report that's been published, you know, normal people, taxpayers, etc. I wondered if the relevant Cabinet Member could just explain, or perhaps tell us, how much money this authority expects to make in the first year from the Peterborough Lottery. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, you come back with another question.
I've got the standing order number 2013. If I can have an answer, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cllr Seaton will answer both questions at the same time.
Might even mix the answer up, Mr Mayor. Let's answer Councillor Fower first. Councillor Fower talks about members of the public not reading the papers. Councillor Fower appears hasn't read the papers. The answer's in the papers, Councillor Fower. To turn to the point from Councillor Ellis, I think all three areas, so the payment strategy, and the parking permits and paying for taxi licensing online will be promoted through a communications campaign through the media, and we're using social media and also our partners. There will be online consultation, you're absolutely right, we're also going to contact voluntary sector organisations which represent vulnerable groups, because I think they're the ones that we really need to focus on. And that will be a specific consultation with those groups. We've also, Councillor Ellis, had people on an almost constant basis within the cash office talking to people who are paying in or doing business through the cash office. So we've got a pretty good idea what the issues are there. I hope that helps, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've asked what I consider to be a relatively simple, straightforward question as to how much money they would be making. Councillor Seaton seems incapable of answering that, preferring instead to make a rather snide and silly comment. And I think it's a shame because obviously the people of Peterborough are, or certainly some of them, are watching live online today. And I congratulate the administration for adopting the Liberal Democrat policy way back in 2011 when we first started arguing for that. But that aside, it is a simple question. How much money are we going to make? And if you don't know, just say I don't know and I'll come back to you.
Thank you. No other questions on 293? Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Seaton?
Mr. Mayor, it does appear to be the case that Councillor Fower asks these questions, and then I think we all know what he does. He puts it on social media and says, I've forced this answer out of the council. He did it with capital expenditure. Okay? Councillor Fower sits on the cross-party budget working group. The cross-party budget working group discussed...
Councillor Seaton, Councillor Fower, what's your point of information?
Point of information, accuracy? Because I no longer sit on the cross-party budget working group and haven't since the start of the financial year. So again, Councillor Seaton is inaccurate.
Thank you, Councillor Feet. Councillor Fower.
Obviously, Mr. Mayor, I was talking about the fact that when this was discussed by the cross-party budget working group, Councillor Fower was on that body. We talked about it in the past, Councillor Fower, not this year. Right? If Councillor Fower, who says the public can't read these documents, actually read the document himself, he would know in section 4.1 it says the expected income to support local good causes is estimated at £65,000 a year from 18-19. We talked about that at the cross-budget working group. It was in the papers that was discussed at the all-party scrutiny. We talked about it in March when it went to the to full council and was discussed as part of the medium-term financial strategy. I think it's about time that Councillor Fower started actually reading papers and not wasting our time here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any more questions on 293?